I worry more about like the wind waves just picking up and coming out of nowhere. I worry about the cold temperature of the water, and those are kind of more like, okay, like let's be really smart about this. Let's make sure we're, wearing our PFD, and let's make sure we're wearing the proper clothing or wetsuit or dry suit. So if you do fall in, you're more likely to survive. You do have to be aware of that.
Welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast, inspiring real women with a passion for fishing and the outdoors to go get their adventure on. Now, here's your fearless host, Angie Scott.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast. This week, I'm honored to welcome another Mustang survival ambassador to the show. Annie Nagel is a saltwater kayak angler out of Northern California and all-around lover of wildlife and the outdoors. She's also all about introducing more women to the sport, so she's the perfect fit for this show. Annie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm stoked to be here.
Awesome. Well, to kick things off, before we get into talking about your background and how you got into kayak fishing specifically, when we were communicating back and forth to set up a time for the call, you mentioned that you just did an all-girls charter with like 15 ladies fishing on the saltwater for king salmon. That sounds like such an amazing time. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was so much fun. We go out on one of our charters out of Sausalito called the Salty Lady, they have a great crew, and the Golden State Salmon Association puts it on. They put on 2 to 3 all women's trips a year. And we're looking to do more because they're starting to sell out within 10 minutes. Awesome. So there's a huge demand, and it's just so much fun. We only caught 5 fish on the trip, and it was honestly one of the most fun trips and best energy I've ever been around, because everybody's just so happy, and it's just such a different experience than being on a boat where you don't know people, or it's all about catching the biggest fish or whatever. It's like more just about having a good time. And we always have a couple new people, a couple really seasoned veterans, usually a birthday or a retirement to celebrate. So it's always just a lot of fun. It's so cool.
Awesome. That seems like a common theme as I interview people that are involved in doing group, like especially women groups outings, like whether it be kayak fishing or ice fishing. It just seems like anytime a group of like-minded ladies get together, it usually turns out to be just a great time.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost hard to put into words, but it's like you can feel it.
Yeah, that's so awesome. It's like some sort of special sauce or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was doing some research on you, and I'm pretty impressed that you have a pretty incredible story. So I can't wait for our listeners who aren't familiar with you to kind of get introduced to your background. If you could paint a picture for everyone, like what your childhood was like, because it sounds like you were kind of a competitive go-getter type person from childhood.
Totally. I had an older brother, and all of my neighbors were boys. So I definitely grew up kind of in that, like, everything's a competition, whether it's riding your bikes around the cul-de-sac or playing kickball or any game. And then me and my brother would literally race to the car every time we left a store. We had that like look that we'd give each other. It was like, okay, competition on, go time. And of course he was always bigger, faster, and stronger. Right. So it was always me trying to keep up, but then it made me kind of a better competitor to people my age. So I was kind of able to keep up with the boys, and I was always just trying to do better. My parents were super into like camping and getting us outdoors, and my dad would play softball, and me and my brother would just go play in the creek all day and try and catch tadpoles and crawdads. And we were always just we're outside almost constantly. Like, it's always so weird to drive to my parents' house and not see like one kid playing in the street.
Yeah.
Because it was like, there was never empty streets. It was like we were all out till the street lights turned on, and it was just, I don't know. So I was kind of always doing something, but I never really got into fishing until later.
Mm-hmm. Now, and this is Northern California, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
And we have like, the big redwoods. We went out to the coast a lot. My parents had a kind of more of a recreational boat. So we'd go out to the lake and go tubing and wakeboarding.
Nice.
And I played like every sport I could in school growing up. And I really liked whitewater rafting. I kind of just was chasing the adrenaline rush wherever I was going.
Yeah. So. And then you had kind of I shouldn't say kind of, a very pivotal experience at the age of 18.
Yes. So I got in a really bad car accident and I was by myself and I took an exit going like 80 miles per hour and it was a pretty big turn and I went off the road and flipped 3 times. And I think they were definitely surprised that I walked out of that car like, okay. I had to, the car landed on its like side and I had to like crawl out the broken windshield and it was not a fun experience. Wow. And it almost killed my whole like adrenaline thing. I think my adrenal glands were so like pumping and so full and that I was never really able to get like an adrenaline rush after that. And that's kind of like what I lived for as a kid. So it was discouraging to say the least. I was kind of getting into like a deep depression. I was trying to go whitewater rafting. I was going rock climbing. I was like doing some canyoneering and all these little activities that I thought for sure would kind of get my blood pumping. And I just kind of was like blah, which I mean, it's just, I don't know. So my boyfriend, he's still my boyfriend, but he took me fishing for the first time. I think it actually started with crabbing and I'm a huge Dungeness crab fan. And when I ate my first one, I was like, I'm sold. And I like got my first adrenaline rush, reeling in a trout and seeing the splash on the water. And it kind of was like game over. It was the only thing that really got my blood pumping from then on. And,
nice.
Yeah. So it's kind of came around full circle a little bit.
Yeah. So, and all that kind of plays together because, growing up being competitive, to me, like, that's kind of one of my draws to fishing is the competitive nature. Like, if you go out with somebody, like, who's going to catch the most or the biggest, And so,
totally. Yeah.
And that just kind of adds to the whole thing. And you do tournament fishing as well, which is kind of like the echelon of the competition,
Yeah. And I do the saltwater tournaments, which are a little, I would say like less, intense than like the bass tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It's almost like that's a little too much competition for me. Like I still want to like, kind of enjoy everything and have fun and it be still a little lighthearted. So it is funny. I have like I'll do the saltwater ones where everybody's kind of laughing afterwards, but
right.
There is kind of a different vibe at the more competitive high money stake, bass tournaments.
So I just joined the Lady Bass Anglers Association, which is like the women's pro tour. And I've yet to have my first event because we were supposed to have one here this month in Louisiana, but it got canceled because of the hurricane that had come through that area. And so we're supposed to have one next month in Missouri. That's going to be my first one. From what I understand, it's kind of like that camaraderie, that group of ladies that gets together. So there's still an element of fun to it. And, and still, even though you're competing against each other, it sounds like it's still a fairly helpful kind of environment, but it'll be interesting to experience and see firsthand. So I'll be excited to report back on what it, it's actually like, cause it is bass fishing and we'll just see how it goes.
Totally. Yeah.
So what is it about kayak fishing that you find so attractive?
I think the independent part of it, I think I have a hard time, like, not fishing. It's not that I don't fish well with others, but I do have a hard time when people are like telling me what to do or what I should be trying or how to reel in a fish or how, or even if I'm like, I don't know. It's like netting somebody else's fish. If I messed up, I would feel horrible kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I really like the independent part where I'm like, I'm choosing the spot I'm fishing. I'm choosing what I'm using. I'm netting my own fish and, bleeding them out and cleaning them out the way I want. I always bring my ice out there with me. So I want to take good care of the fish. So it's kind of like I get to call the shots and I feel good about it. Sometimes when I go out with other people, I just stay quiet and I don't want to like tell them how they should be doing things or, step on any toes. So I think really just that independent factor. And if I want to just kind of go off on my own, I have that option, or we can kind of spread out a couple people to like, okay, well, why don't you try this reef and I'll go fish over here. And if we find the fish, call me on the radio or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a different aspect or whatever. And then just the exercise part of it. I feel like I wouldn't exercise at all if it weren't for kayak fishing. So, just now it's more of a leg workout because I have pedal kayaks, but before it was my arm workout, and I'd paddle and and then all the fishing and rock fishing, especially we fish like in 100 to 180 feet of water for rockfish.
Wow.
So just pulling it up and down all day, it's a little tiring, but so it's really just kind of the active aspect and then the independent thing that I think is my biggest draw.
I can relate to the independent thing. It's just kind of fun to go out there and just kind of figure it out yourself.
Exactly. And I always feel like it's kind of like this science experiment. Like, I don't know. It's like, you can be kind of silly, or I don't know, you can do things where you're like, I wouldn't normally do this. Like, but I'm going to try it. Why not? Or
there's nobody around to judge you and be like,
exactly.
Why in the world are you doing that?
You're never going to catch a fish like that.
And so I also read that you prefer saltwater to freshwater. What is it about saltwater that draws you?
That's a good question. I feel like it's so like unknown, and I'm so curious about it. Like I want to know more, and I want to know, what kind of things are out there. And I love the wildlife we see out there. I saw my first blue whales, which are like the biggest, mammal in the world. So it's kind of crazy to be right next to one. I was on a boat, not the kayak, but still. But I don't know. It's like the wildlife out there I'm so into. I think I like that it doesn't get too hot on our coast. Sometimes when it's like a lot of our inshore lakes get really hot and it's like 100 degrees and I'm like, wait, do I want to go fishing or swimming?
Right.
So I think I'm a little sensitive to really hot temperatures, and I really like the whole, like I love the fog. I just love our coast. I think our coast is also like in California, everything's so like metropolitan kind of, and it's kind of like the only escape where you have no cell service. There's like no houses out there. You're like on these cliffy beaches and there's very little access to the actual water. And a lot of people don't want to drive on the curvy road. So it really is like you getting really away from everything. Mm-hmm. And I feel like at the lake, I am surrounded by houses. I'm surrounded by people on boats or people like wakeboarding and stuff. And I'm like, wait, your wakes are messing up my fishing. Like, where's my peaceful tranquility? Fishing, I don't know. So,
well, so on the flip side, saltwater can be pretty treacherous at times. And I read a quote, I guess it was, where you said that you embrace fear and turn it into excitement, which is an awesome mentality. But what's one of like the scariest moments that comes to mind that you've experienced out there on big water kayak fishing?
Probably my number one biggest or fear, like my scariest moment was I was spear fishing and I was diving underwater and I kind of basically a seal. They're very quick in the water because they live there. And he came out of nowhere and he kind of was like kind of messing with me. And I hear like the sea lions are a lot kind of more aggressive. So luckily it was just a seal. But I think that was like the most like intense like realization where anything can change in a second. And I do feel like I have a healthy fear. Like everybody's like, oh, aren't you afraid of the sharks? And I'm kind of like, I'm really afraid of the hypothermia. Like I'm going to die a lot quicker from hypothermia than the likeliness of a shark coming and biting me. And like, honestly, most people do survive the shark attacks. So I do keep that in the back of my mind. I try and just keep it a healthy fear, but I worry more about like the wind waves just picking up and coming out of nowhere. I worry about the cold temperature of the water. And those are kind of more like, okay, like, let's be really smart about this. Let's make sure we're, wearing our PFD, and let's make sure we're wearing the proper clothing or wetsuit or dry suit. So if you do fall in, you're more likely to survive. And because, you do have to be aware that things can happen and change really quickly. And
yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, because I know you're a big proponent of safety, and you mentioned the PFD, proper clothing. Is there anything else you do to help ensure safety as much as possible when you're out on the ocean?
I think those are like the biggest things: dressing for immersion, having your VHF radio so you can call for help from the Coast Guard and other boaters and kayakers. A compass. Like, there's so many little things that you kind of don't think about. And I think especially with new people getting into kayak fishing, it's like a really important thing to remind them, like, always dress for immersion, always have a compass so you can find your way back in case all your electronics die. Download whatever you can on your phone, get a fish finder, and just, I don't know, like being aware of your surroundings and what's going on, and always checking the weather reports. I think just the new people are just so excited to get out there, and they kind of go out in their jeans and their cotton t-shirts, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, don't you know how bad this can get? And you're going to put somebody else in danger. And then the other thing is practicing self-rescue. I think people don't do that enough, and all you have to do is take your kayak to a lake and fall in and flip it over, and then, practice the right way to flip it back over. Or remember, you might have like rods or things leashed to your kayak, so maybe practice with those things for a real kind of scenario in case you are in that situation. But yeah, it's just kind of being aware and practicing, and
That's great. That's great advice. So I admittedly have only been kayak fishing one time in my life, and it was actually out of La Jolla.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You have to go through some waves there.
Yeah, a little bit. It wasn't too bad that day, thankfully, because that was actually my biggest fear, was getting out of the surf and back in.
Yeah.
But luckily, I thought they were fairly big, but our guide said, "Oh, this is nothing."
Right.
So
yeah,
I was like, "Okay."
Really crazy. Yeah.
So anyway, we went quite a ways out. Maybe not to you, but I think we went like 7 to 9 miles out. And
that's awesome.
And we were trying for halibut. And he actually got one. I think I definitely got cleaned a few times, and then I got hung one time. So just, kind of being inexperienced or whatever, I didn't actually catch one myself, but that was quite an experience. And we had seals swimming around, and we actually got one on the GoPro. That was kind of cool. So it was cool being out there. I definitely
that's super cool.
See the draw, and like we had a slight chance of possibly getting a tuna, so it's like, it's just exciting you never really know what you're going to get.
I know. And I should add that to my saltwater thing. Like, I love that part of it. Like, it is kind of a gamble when you're out there. You could get something you weren't even targeting, and it could be like the coolest catch of your life.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, one other thing I read this on the Mustang survival site, is that you once dove down 68 feet in 56-degree water in one breath. How in the world were you able to do that?
Yeah, that is something that I never, ever thought I would do or even thought was possible. I was lucky enough to have a spearfishing company kind of reach out to me, and they basically liked my Instagram, and they're like, let us know when you want to take it under the water. And of course, like, being kind of the safety based person I am, I'm like, okay, well, I want to do it under the water, but I also want to have all of the right gear, and what I need lessons. And so they actually helped me get the gear and kind of have a payment plan so I could get it sooner than I would ever be able to. And then they signed me up for a FII level 1 class, which basically gets you down 60 feet something like that. And so they signed me up, and then I was like, okay, let's do this. And we were doing breath holds in the pool, and they basically spent a whole day teaching us how our bodies work and our physiology and how your body reacts to cold water and everything, and how to recognize if you're going to have a shallow water blackout. And it was such useful information. And then I still, like, the next day was the big dive, and I didn't think I would be able to do it. My boyfriend was with me, and I was like, okay, well, I'm sure you can do it, but I don't think I can go down that deep. I'll be happy if I hit, anything. And it's really because the pressure down there is so intense. And I think me being a little bit smaller than my boyfriend, I think he didn't feel like as much pressure at like 45 feet as I did. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up doing it, and it was like seriously the biggest accomplishment of my life, and something I'm like so proud of, because it's really hard. It's like not an easy thing to do. And I'm in an 8mm wetsuit to try and keep warm, and you can't see, like, our waters. There was like 1 foot visibility, so you're just kind of diving into this, I don't know, like darkness. Wow. So it is crazy.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would be like a panic attack situation.
Yeah, there's definitely a few people that it didn't work for them, but yeah.
Well, I heard, I was listening to the Salt Strong podcast a while back, and they were Joe Simons, who hosts that show, he was kind of talking about, he used to suffer from panic attacks, actually, and his brother Luke was going through this free diving course where they teach you how to breathe and hold your breath and not panic and that sort of thing. And Joe couldn't make the course because he had something going on with his family. But when Luke got back, he was telling him about it and taught him how they took him through the breathing and everything. And that was actually like the biggest game changer for him for changing his panic attacks, was going through that like deep breathing exercise that they put you through. And that's like been a game changer for him. So
I can totally relate to that. I use the breathing techniques if I need to calm myself down and slow down my heart rate. And then also when can't sleep, I do exactly what they taught us in the class, and next thing I know, it's morning. So It definitely does work. It's amazing how just breathing can really change everything.
So even if you're not interested in being able to do that, it might not be a bad thing to go through one of those courses just to get those other benefits.
Exactly. That's a totally good point.
So you have something pretty exciting coming up. So you founded a kayak fishing tournament called Fish Like a Girl. How did all that come about?
So it's kind of a big, like a bunch of random things that just kind of happened and then sparked the idea. But basically I randomly posted a picture of me holding a halibut in a dress. And I don't really do that ever, but it was like over 100 degrees and I was so hot, and so I was like, I'm gonna go fishing in a dress, this sounds like fun. And so somebody commented, so a bunch of people were commenting like, oh, I need to put my dress on a bunch of guys, and they're making all these jokes. And then somebody from Florida actually messaged me and was like, oh, that's kind of cool, it reminds me of this little fun tournament in Florida we do where you have to like wear a wig or wear a dress or whatever, and dress like a girl. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's a genius idea. I have, the perfect kayak friends for that. So basically over time, the idea kind of came, and I was like, wouldn't it be great if like we got more women on the water, but then we also had, guys dressing up like girls to kind of like promote good sportsmanship. And it basically turned into this idea of having a tournament with teams of 2. Every team must have a girl, and if you couldn't find a girl to fish with, you had to dress like one. And it was just to be like promote good sportsmanship, have fun, be lighthearted, and then get more women on the water. And then it got canceled due to COVID. And I kind of gave up on I just kind of was like, okay, well, we're just going to postpone it till next year. And then one of my companies that I pro staff for sends out little monthly newsletters. And one of the things was about trying to get more people on the water just in general, and how, there's less kids fishing than there ever was before, and kind of stuff like that. And I was like, ooh, I want to or I think at first I was so bummed. I was like, oh, well, I guess, I wish I was having my tournament, because that would have been perfect for getting more people on the water. And then I was like, why don't I do something? I can still do an online tournament. And why did, everybody else is still doing it in California, and they're just made it online, and there's no, potluck anymore or whatever. And then, so I ended up just kind of doing some research and emailed all my little sponsors and pro staff. I was like, if I put this together, can you help me out with some prizes? And they were all for it. And so I am hosting a women's fishing tournament. It doesn't matter if you are fly fishing, kayak fishing, fishing off a boat, shore. I am keeping this one first just to California, Oregon, and Washington, just to kind of see how the first one goes. But it's going to run from October 1st to the 31st. It's going to be very lighthearted. If you get skunked, I still want you to post your picture that you got skunked, and we can still celebrate it. It's good that people got out on the water.
Yeah.
I want to reward people for bringing new people out. So if you submit a picture with, your friend that you brought out fishing for the first time, that's a point for you. And basically each submission is going to get the people the girls a raffle ticket.
Okay.
And we're going to have a lot of really great prizes: Mustang Survival, AFCO, Costa sunglasses. They've all stepped up. We have gift cards from Pitbull Tackle, and it's going to be really fun, I think. And it's not going to be obviously the same, but I'm really excited, and I'm hoping that it can kind of grow and either be kind of a regional thing or eventually just a national thing, kind of depending on how it goes the first time. Yeah. And I'm really excited that there's going to be kind of a breast cancer awareness component, that
cool.
You get an extra point if you wear pink. So it's really just focused on just getting out there and having fun, and not so much about catching the biggest fish. Or it's not going to be you post your picture on a scale or on a measuring board. It's going to be you get to take a picture with the fish, and that's your submission.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's going to be on iAngler. So it's not quite uploaded yet, but It should be in the next week. And so keep your eye out on iAngler, and then I'll send you the link once I do have it up.
Yeah. So definitely do that. I'll put it in the show notes, whether or not it's ready to go when this comes out or after. I can always go back in and update it, but
Perfect.
I'll definitely share that. That's so cool. I love that idea that everybody has a chance to win.
Exactly. And that's, I didn't want to discourage people because they feel like they can't catch the biggest fish in that category, or they can't enter because they don't kayak fish. But it's you should still be able to go out and do your thing and, have fun and just show off what you're catching and what you're doing, and make it fun.
Well, very, very awesome. I love that. Where else can people follow you online?
So I have my Annie's Fish Tales on both Instagram and Facebook. I'm definitely more active on the Instagram. And then I did the other thing, this is the biggest news, the biggest announcement, is I changed the name of the Fish Like a Girl tournament, just because there were quite a few around the nation that have the same name. And it's kind of, I wanted to think of something kind of unique. So the new name is Scales in My Nails.
Nice.
Ladies fishing tournament.
Awesome.
So I did just make a new Instagram, and so Scales in My Nails is the other Instagram, and that's where I'll be posting pictures that girls submit from the tournament, prizes, and then there'll be kind of a little photo contest for a little special prize, and then the most votes wins or whatever. So I'll keep posting pictures through October as the ladies submit them, and try and get the most creative picture to win or whatever.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, exciting. I can't wait to see this and follow it, and I hope it's a huge success. And
thank you. I'm super stoked.
And that everybody just has fun with it,
Thank you. I hope so too. I hope it kind of goes as planned. It was hard to find a platform that would even really work because everybody just wants pounds and inches. And I was like, do I just tell the girls put 1 inch? Or so I'm really stoked that I found a good platform that could work with me to get this little thing going. It's going to be a blast, I think.
Yeah, I can't wait to check it out. Well, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, and thank you again for being on the show. And
thank you.
And we will stay in touch. Maybe someday I'll make it back out to California. I do have an aunt who lives out in Portland, so kind of out that way anyways. So
yeah, maybe you can make it from next year's real life, real scales in the nails fishing tournament.
That would be awesome. Definitely. All right.
Thank you.